Now that we've learned the rook, I think it's time we double your knowledge, don't you? The bishop wants to zip across the long diagonal to the other side of the board. Can you send the bishop to h8 in one move? Great job! The bishop dashes across the board and lands on h8 in one move. The bishop is hungry. Can you find a piece, a snack, for the bishop to capture or eat? Delicious! The bishop captures the rook as a snack. Great job! Both bishops are still hungry to eat more pieces. Which bishop can capture a black piece and enjoy a snack? Yum! The dark-squared bishop captures the rook and enjoys it as a snack. Great job! The rook chases the light-squared bishop like Tom chases Jerry. Can the dark-squared bishop help out its friend and capture the rook? Great job! The cat and mouse chase ends with the bishop, the mouse, capturing the rook, the cat. The light-squared bishops are having a staring contest. White's bishop is also staring at another piece that can't see it on the diagonal. Find White's best capture to win a piece. Great job! Rooks can't move on diagonals, so it didn't see the bishop's diagonal attack. White wins an entire rook for free. Every good movie has a trilogy. The queen wants to sprint across the board. How can she leap to h8 and reach the 8th rank in one move? Excellent! The queen races across the a1, h8 diagonal, reaching h8 in just one move. The queen wants to visit a8, but the bishop blocks the path. Where can she move first and get to a8 on the second move? Excellent job! The queen moves to h1, ready to cruise up the light squared diagonal to a8 on the next turn. The queen is battling 3 black pieces. Can you find the move where the queen can safely win one of the black pieces for free? Great job! The rook on a8 was the only black piece without a guard. The 2 black bishops are teaming up against the white queen. Can you find a way for the queen to safely attack both bishops at the same time? Wonderful! And since the bishops can't protect each other, one of the bishops will get captured on the next turn. The queens are having a stare down. Can you find a way for White's queen to safely capture a black piece for free? Excellent. White captures the rook on h7 that was not protected by any other piece and wins it for free. We just got done talking about mom. The king wants to climb to a8 in just 2 moves. Can you find the first move on his journey? Excellent. The king now touches A8, so it can climb to the top corner. White's king is hungry. How can he capture the lonely rook? Yum! The king has a feast by eating the rook. The black queen is zapping the white king. White to move. Can you capture black's queen first? Great job. The king captures the queen first. So much for her power. Black's rook is threatening the white king. Find a king move that escapes the danger and captures a black piece. Great job! The king escapes the attack from black's rook and captures the black bishop. Black's rook is aiming at white's king. Can you find a king move that escapes danger and attacks both black pieces at once? Excellent! White escapes the rook's attack and threatens to capture both black pieces at the same time. It's time to move on to the little guy. We call these short little guys the pawn. In fact, in some languages, they're called the farmer. One of white's pawns is blocked and cannot move because a black pawn is in its way. March the other pawn up the board. Great job. The pawn marches up the board. The two white pawns are racing up the board. Push the pawn that can reach the finish line, the 8th rank, in just 2 moves. Great job! You picked the winner. This pawn will win the race by reaching the 8th rank on the next move. The white pawn is hungry and wants to eat a black piece for lunch. Capture the black rook. Delicious! The white pawn eats the black rook for lunch. Great job! Traffic jam! All of the pawns are blocked. Remember, black's pawns are moving up. Find the one black pawn that can capture a white piece. Great job! Black's pawn captures the white rook and is free to keep marching. White's lone pawn can attack both powerful black rooks. Find the move to create a double attack. Excellent! The pawn attacks both black rooks at once, so white will capture one of the rooks on the next turn. Every chess family needs a pet, and in chess, we don't have dogs or cats or squirrels. By the way, who's got a pet? The knight wants to travel to A8 in just 2 moves. Move the knight to a square where it can hop to A8 on the next turn. Great job! The knight jumps to the dark square B6, and next to the light square A8. White's knight wants to land on a black rook and capture it. Which rook can you capture? Remember, knights switch colors every jump. Great job. The knight jumps from the dark square and lands on the light square e6, capturing black's rook. Can you make white's knight jump over the rook and capture black's queen? I bet you can. Great job. This move jumps over the rook and lands on top of the queen, capturing black's powerful piece. White's knight can jump to a square that attacks both of black's pieces, but how? Wonderful. The knight jumps to f5, attacking both black's queen and rook at the same time. White's knight is ready to leap to a square and attack all 7 of black's pieces at once. Can you find a super move for this super knight? Fantastic. This knight leaps to d5, attacking all 7 of black's pieces at once. Wow! The knight is like a magnet, attracting all of black's pieces to squares where the knight will capture them. First, capture the pawn on c7. Great job! You captured the pawn on c7. Excellent! You just won another pawn. Zap! The bishop disappears from the board. Fantastic! The knight eats the rook. Excellent! You captured black's most powerful piece, the queen. Well, now you know how all the pieces move. Maybe you're thinking you've got... Danger! The white king is under attack. One of black's pieces is checking the white king. Which one is it? The black bishop was checking the white king. White must make a move to get out of check. In this case, she must move her king. Black has just checked the white king again. Can you see which piece is saying check and how to get the king out of check? This is a great move. You got the king out of check. Now look for another way to save the king from check. Very good. The rook was checking the king. Remember, the rook moves side to side and up and down. The king could have also moved to c5, e3, or d3 to get out of check. One very good way to get out of check is to capture the piece which is checking the king. Can you see how white does that now? Very good. The bishop checked the white king, but our knight simply captured it. The white king is in check again. Another way to get out of check is to block. This means you use one of your pieces as a shield to block the check from the attacking piece. Which piece blocks black's check? Very good. By moving our bishop to d5, we block black's bishop from checking our king. It's willing to stand in harm's way to protect the king, a very noble gesture. Black captures the blocking piece. Great job! Remember, your king can sometimes protect itself by capturing the checking piece. In this case, you protected your king and also saved the queen. In this position, there are two ways white can save his king. He can move the king or block the check with the queen. Which is better? Great job! You saved the king by moving him away from the bishop's attack. Now you've seen the three ways to get out of check: capture, protect, and run away. One cool way to remember this is CPR, a life-saving technique to save a person who can't breathe. Now you know CPR for your king. Remember CPR? This time, all three ways of getting out of check are possible here: capturing, protecting, and running away. But which one is best? It's your turn to decide. Be sure to look at each one. Woohoo! In this position, the running away method was best. Capturing the bishop on b4 looks good, but then black would use his a8 rook to capture yours. Using your rook to block on d2 wouldn't be as good because the black bishop would capture it. Now that you know what the word check means, it's time to add that second part of the word back on. You win the game when one of your pieces says check, and the enemy king has no way to escape. He can't capture, protect, block, run, or magically disappear. This is called checkmate. Black has just checkmated the white king. The bishop, which just moved to d5, has the white king in check and is also preventing it from running to g2. The c5 bishop is preventing the king from running to g1. Checkmate. The big difference between checkmate and stalemate is the check. If a player has no moves at all, but is not in check, that is a stalemate, a draw. If the player has no moves but the king is in check, that is a checkmate, a win. Here, if it were black's move, the position would be stalemate. Luckily, it's white's move. How do you deliver checkmate? Great job! The black king had no moves, so the only thing white had to do was check him. Other moves by this bishop would be stalemate, since black would not be in check but would have no moves. If it were black's move, this position would be a stalemate because he's not in check. But it's white's move, and he should checkmate right now. There are several ways to checkmate the king. Find one. Great move. You have checkmated black. The king is in check, has no place to run, and can't capture the queen because white's king protects her. Congratulations. In chess, even a humble pawn can bring the king to his knees. Can a pawn deliver checkmate? Yes, it is possible for a pawn to deliver checkmate. Find it. Great job. The pawn moves forward, placing the black king in check. Black can't get away because the other pawn on f7 is covering his escape squares e8 and g8. White's king protects both pawns and also guards g7. In order to decide if a position is checkmate or not, you'll need to remember the 3 ways to get out of check that we talked about in the previous lesson. Is this checkmate? Decide on your answer and then click Continue to see if you're right or not. Now that you know how to win a game with checkmate, it's time to move on to see how a game of chess might also end. Today's word is stalemate, which sounds a lot like checkmate, but I assure you there's a huge difference. When a king has nowhere to go, but is not in check, it is stalemate. A stalemate is a draw or a tie. If you have a big advantage in points, you don't want this to happen. At first, everything seems fine for black, but black forgot one important thing. The white king isn't in check, and since it's not check, it's a stalemate. Black definitely should have won this game, and white is happy to escape with a draw. Pay close attention because white is about to make a very common mistake, which turns this winning position into a draw. First, think what move you would make here, and then click Continue to see white's mistake. This move looks good. The king steps up aggressively, and now the black king has nowhere to run. The only problem is that black is also not in check. It's a stalemate. Instead, white should have moved queen d7 and then played king g6. Checkmate would happen soon after. When you have a lot of pieces and your opponent only has a king, you have to be extra careful. This is exactly the time when you need to be on the lookout for stalemate. Click Continue to see. Oops! This just took away e4, black's last free square. But it's also not check, so it's stalemate. White is winning and should have found a way to win. Stalemate usually happens when one side only has a king left, but sometimes it can happen even when there are other pieces on the board. If those pieces can't move, and the king also can't move but is not in check, the position is still stalemate. The queen swoops in and threatens the bishop on e1. White's bishop now can't move because the white king would be in check. The problem is that this move leaves white with no moves at all. Look at each of white's pieces. None of them can move, and white's king isn't in check, so it's stalemate. Would playing queen f7 be a bad move, causing stalemate? Think about whether queen f7 is okay or not, and then click Continue. There is nothing wrong with queen f7 here. It's one of the fastest ways to checkmate black in this position. Remember that it's only stalemate if there are no legal moves. Here, black can't move his king, but he still can move his knight or pawn. White can then deliver checkmate on the next move. Black has no choice but to move the knight or pawn. He would actually prefer that the pawn and knight were gone from the board, since it would be stalemate. Very good. The king guards the queen while she checkmates the black king. Now look for a different way to use the same method to checkmate the black king. Great. This is checkmate. White's earlier queen f7 was good because it sets up checkmate on the next move. It would have been a bad move if black didn't have the knight and pawn. Black is losing and played the very tricky move rook takes h2 check. White is in check. How should he capture the rook? Choose carefully. Good. This was much better than capturing with the king, which would have been stalemate. White is winning, so go for the win, not the stalemate. By now, you know what checkmate is. Sometimes a rook can help a queen to deliver checkmate by working along the same rank together. Where does the white rook move to help support the queen? White brings the rook all the way to the 7th rank, creating a powerful helper for the queen. Black won't be able to stop checkmate. Black has no way to stop checkmate, so decide to take the bishop. Now you're familiar enough to find some battery checkmates yourself. Now that you've learned about helper checkmates, let's put that knowledge to use. Find the battery checkmate. The bishop on a2 helps the queen achieve all her dreams. In this position, white needs to act fast, since black is ahead by points. Use your knowledge of helpers to try and force a checkmate in 2 moves. Excellent! You found the first move. This is the most forcing way to attack the black king. The bishop and queen are preparing to work together. Black is forced to make this move. Great work! You found the move that wins the game. It's not always easy to bring in reinforcements. In this game, the black queen can't checkmate the enemy king by herself. Who should help her attack g2? Yes, this is the correct way to bring in help, and it actually leaves white in a very difficult position. Rook g8 doesn't work because you allow white's bishop to capture it. White stops the mate on g2. Other blocking moves lose material, or black still crashes through if the king runs away. This is the clearest path to victory. Queen h3 was also good, and black would likely go on to win with the right moves. White tries to run away. Black continues with the plan he started with Queen f3. Queen g2 check was also possible, followed by the same idea played in the game. The only move. Great move by black. Bringing in the bishop to f3 with check was also possible, but this move brings in the final attacking piece. White pretends like he's defending the rook on e1. That's it. The queen is once again helped by a piece, and even though it isn't checkmate just yet, White resigned in the game. White is down a whole rook, and checkmate is coming soon. White has a big advantage, but how do we proceed? An amazing move! White's pieces are well placed. He just needs one more helper to prepare checkmate. In this case, it's the king. Black has no useful moves, so he waited, daring the white king to journey farther. Yes, he can. What good is having a king if he can't fight for himself? Or at least help others, right? What else was black supposed to do? Of course, the king continues his march to help his queen. Did black trick us into bringing the king out only to trap our rook? We actually don't need our rook. Our king continues to march forward, and black can't stop it. With nothing else to do, black takes the rook. Yes, the king is almost there. Black tries anything, even a reckless move, but nothing can save his king. Checkmate, an amazing king march. It shows that the queen almost always needs a helper to achieve her goals, even if it's the king. Today, we're going to look at a little bit longer checkmate. There is a simple pattern for white to win this game every time. You can use the pattern shown here to win with queen and king against the lone king. You can't checkmate the king in the middle of the board, so the first step is to push the king to the edge. White does this by building a force field around the king. With queen c3, this force field extends to the c-file and also along the third rank. Too bad for black that he can't skip a move. He has to back up, which will give white a chance to shrink the force field slowly until the black king is stuck on the side of the board. Black can always go over or back, but it doesn't matter. Whichever way he goes, he is moving closer to the edge of the board. Even by backing up, the queen moves a knight's jump away. No matter where the black king goes, he will get pushed to the edge no matter what. The queen stays a knight's jump away from the king. In this case, the black king is slowly being forced to the right edge of the board. The king starts moving back. He could have gone to g3, but then white would play queen f1, building a force field on the f-file and pushing it closer to the edge. Notice the pattern? The queen moves a knight's move away again. Black can't cross the imaginary walls she creates. By now, you should see the pattern. Our queen only needs to move up one square, staying a knight's move away, slowly squeezing the black king to the edge of the board. The king could have moved back to f7, but then the queen would advance to e5, making the box smaller. Now the king is stuck on the last two files on the right. Our plan is working. The king tries to avoid going to the side of the board. If he went to h4, then queen g2 would build a force field on the g-file, keeping the king stuck on the side forever. The king refused to go to the h-file, so white pushes him back further. After this move, the black king has no choice but to go to the very edge of the board, to g8, h8, or h6. White didn't need to check the king even once in order to force him that way. This is a great move that traps the black king to the h-file and does not stalemate him. Good work. The white king could now join the queen by marching up the f-file and eventually deliver checkmate, as you'll see later in the lesson. Excellent. You found the best way to make sure the black king stays on the edge of the board, and you didn't stalemate him. White will now bring the king in and finish the job. Note that queen g6 or queen f7 were both the terrible moves white could have played that would have been stalemate. Only move for black. The king moves closer to the black king until he is standing across from him on g6. The poor black king can only move back and forth, waiting for the white king's arrival. The king keeps coming up. Of course, king f3 was just as good. The king continues on its journey. The king should approach from the front, while the queen stays to the side. This will help us avoid stalemate and make checkmate easier. The king now faces the black king. The black king can wiggle one way or the other, but it won't be able to stop the checkmate. Moving the other way would not make any difference. The king guards the queen. Another way to checkmate was queen d8. If you've been paying attention, then you know the pattern we use to chase the king to the side of the board. Think like a knight. Very good. The queen has built a box around the black king. She has force field walls on the D file and the third rank that prevent the king from escaping that box. The king, as usual, has to back up. The queen steps one square closer, making the imaginary box a little bit smaller. The black king could step back or to the right, but either way he would be moving toward one of the edges of the board. Very good. The queen takes only one small step. No hurry. The important thing is to make the box smaller without letting the black king out. The king is trying its best to stay away from the edge of the board. White keeps moving his queen in the knight's move pattern. Slowly we are squeezing him over to the side of the board. The king is trying to stay away from the right edge of the board. Good job. Last move the black king refused to move toward the right side of the board. Let's push him to the top edge. The black king is still trying to avoid the side of the board where he knows he can be checkmated, but it won't last long. Great. White is keeping the queen a knight's move away, out of reach of capture. The king didn't want to go to h5, which would leave him stuck on the h-file forever after queen g3. I bet you could have guessed it by now. The queen inches closer. Now any move by the black king would put him on the side of the board. Just as good would be queen d7, but let's just keep going with our knight's move away method just to make sure we get it down. Great job. The black king is now just where we want him, stuck on the edge of the board. The first part of our plan is complete. White has trapped the black king on the edge of the board. She needs help. Move your king. Good job. The king needs to come up to help in the attack. But be sure you are sending your king the right way. Now look for another way to reach the same goal. Very good. The king is headed up to support the queen. She cannot give checkmate alone. Black is stuck moving back and forth. Good job. The king continues on his journey. Yes, the king keeps moving up. You want your king to be coming from a different direction than where your queen is. Going in the same direction could lead to stalemate. Good. This is also heading in the right direction. Now look for another way to reach the destination square for the king. Good job. The king is almost there. Good job. The king has now reached a square to help the queen to deliver checkmate. The black king has been trapped. The white king is now in the perfect position. Can you find the final move? Super job! The queen is checking the black king and is protected by the white king. The black king has no safe squares. Checkmate. By now, you know a lot about queen and king versus king. Let's see if you can finish this position. Find the right move. Good! You just built a wall in the 7th rank, keeping the king stuck on the edge of the board forever. You didn't play king g6 or king f6, so you also avoided stalemate. Right. You've prepared everything, and now your king can move forward to help the queen. It wouldn't make a difference if the king went into the corner. White would still have checkmate on the next move. Excellent. The king and queen work well together. Black has no safe squares to run to and can't capture the queen.